I got a lot of PMs and messages about just like what skills are required. What do you guys think? I think the call that we did 2 weeks ago now when Kyle was kind of talking about skills made me see things in a different light.
That's a good point, though. Like, we didn't necessarily think about them as the skills. It was just like, this is kind of what we're
What we need to
seeing.
do.
Yeah, this is like a hole in our game, and we need to figure out, like, how do we run better ads, and how do we, whatever else we were missing at the time, like, how do we fill those holes just with taking in as much knowledge as possible and then trying to figure out how to apply that. But now looking back, it was like, oh yeah, we built those skills over time. But that's definitely not the way that I think you go into it. Like, how do I increase my SEO skills? It's probably not something you're searching. But like, how do I do this specific thing on this specific platform is definitely a better way of probably searching and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and I guess I'll ask you specific art questions because this month I would like to focus in on art. But I guess
Perfect.
Let's switch things up again and start with the question of the week. I think it'll help lead us into tonight's call. So the question of the week is really pulled from many people asking me this question. I'm just trying to put it together where I think the core of what people are asking me. So what skills are needed to run a successful print-on-demand business? And I guess there are, as how I see it, there's multiple levels of a print-on-demand business. So if you're just getting started, the skills needed versus like running a business how we have it, where we go after multiple platforms, multiple products on multiple customer bases and different niches, those skills I think are a little different. But I think if you're just getting started, you need to focus in on learning the skills. And then as you grow, you can then hire out those skills. So this is a very simplified list. As I was trying to put a list together, it just was like growing and growing and growing. We even over the weekend had a mastermind call with some other people that we were doing, and we were just kind of going through the skills required. And it was like 4 pages of skills. And I was like, this is too much. And this 4 pages, I think, can get boiled down into like a lot of these things are the same skill, just like maybe different levels of mastery inside that skill. So we're trying to build a more comprehensive, easier to follow list. So I just wanted to have 3 main ones that I think are a requirement to have a successful starting POD business. So the 3 main ones I think are design, and maybe Nathaniel, you might have a better word for that, or art or something like that. But I just wanted to capture the idea of like, you're going to need design, you're going to need SEO, which is search engine optimization, which is indexing, which is keywords, and then research, which I think is just like how you see the market. Are you able to understand where you should be targeting your listings, and just a different levels of mastery in research too, because you can do market research, niche research. There's many different layers of research, but I think these are the 3 main ones that you should have.
So that is a fairly simple list. And yes, I would say design is a fine word to explain and kind of bring all of those thoughts together, and just like, you need the design skill. But I think that's why we started on Merch by Amazon, or why we're having success and why we're still teaching on Merch by Amazon, because you don't need the 4 pages of skills. You can kind of just understand the basic concepts and then over time get better at them. Something that I've learned working inside of Shopify is that those skills need to be expanded, and usually that means bringing in other people who can master those skills. But with Merch by Amazon, like, I was able to run my account for several months just by myself, and then bringing you on definitely helped. But it was more like you were training me how to do those things for myself. So then at one time we were running 2 accounts just kind of on our own side by side and like picking up different things. So it's not as necessary to like build out this whole team to run a Merch by Amazon, because they do so many things over there just to simplify the platform. So you can have the basic understanding of some of those things and still run a successful Merch by Amazon account at least.
Yeah, it's a great earn while you learn platform. I think that's why we are constantly suggesting merch. It's not the end all or be all, especially if you're trying to grow like a brand and an actual business. I think it's harder to do on merch, but it's a great place to start. You get to tap into their organic traffic and just focus in on those more, I think, required skills, like building better designs, crafting better listings, understanding SEO, understanding how to do research. It lets you get the core essential, I think, skills kind of, I don't know about mastered, but you can start to really have a depth of knowledge in there before you move on to additional platforms.
I was going to say, it might even just show you like what areas you're weakest in.
Yes.
You can kind of get away with having, not 10 years of experience in graphic design, because you can go after like text-based things, or something that's not as graphic as intensive. But you can also, like with the SEO, like you're saying, like it's pretty limited on what you can do as far as like optimizing your listing. So it's not like you have to have this huge wealth of knowledge, or can really even use that huge wealth of knowledge on Amazon. But if that's something you're struggling with, they're like, okay, I've identified that. I'm doing a good enough job to get my shirts to sell. But if I really wanted to move to a different platform and expand this thing, maybe that's where I would hire someone to help me in that area. So it will point out kind of the holes in your game, as far as like the things that you're just not
As comfortable.
yeah, aren't your zone of genius, as our friend Christy would say.
I guess so. Let me switch things up a little bit and ask you questions, because I think you're the one that, not to make it sound bad, but you're the one that got us started on POD, and it did start from merch. We quickly expanded into other platforms, but it was very art driven to start. And I think I added that level of SEO, being able to better position our listings. But I think the designs is what helped you in the beginning to sell. So I think if we start on just merch, which the plan for this week is to start on merch and just designs, what advice would you give for people just getting started? Like how to go about, or I guess, how you started. What was your idea for crafting designs when you got started with merch? So I guess the question I'm trying to really ask is, what really made you get started with merch? I don't remember exactly what you were doing before. I think you were working at the t-shirt industry.
Yeah, was already working in the t-shirt industry. I kind of, at my time, had a dream job, where I was like, cool, I'm getting paid consistently for graphic design, because before that I was just doing freelance. So there was a lot of headache in that and dealing with clients of my own and all of that stuff. So I was working at my dream job, but after a couple of months of working this said dream job, I realized that I have these skills and it feels a little bit silly to be going to this building. I have this theory that I'm just lazy. And I want to do a whole like presentation on that, because it's funny to like look back at my life now. It was like I was enjoying the work that I was doing. I was riding to work, which was only like a mile or so. It wasn't like crazy far. Like everything.
You were living on Easy Street. It couldn't
yeah, but I was still like, I want to do less. So I was like, how can I do what I'm doing at work from home, but still have that consistency and really not deal with clients? That was like my big gripe at the time. And so that's why I started looking online, and I heard about Merch by Amazon. So I just started digging into that. I applied for an account, and after a couple months, I got my account. And yeah, just started really digging into the platform, because I was like, this is basically the same skills that I'm using at work. If I could do this for myself and do this without a salary cap, that would be a pretty cool transition, I think, that I could have. And it was all just very daydreamy type things going on at the time. But after a couple of months in the platform and seeing like, oh, this thing actually has some legs and what I'm doing is working. I don't fully understand why it's working, but it is working. Let me like really press into this. And my theory at that time was like, I want to work for myself as many hours as I am working for this t-shirt industry. So I would wake up, work a couple of hours, go to work for 8 hours, and then after in the afternoon work for a couple more hours, just so I had like some balance, and just the motivation was there to use the skill set all day long, but for two different reasons.
Yeah, I guess I never asked you, why was there like a turning point in working at that job where you were like, I'm unhappy, now I'm going to try to do something else? Or was it just like, oh, I want to make more? You said you were lazy, but I don't really know if that is the reason at the time, because it wasn't like you were coming home like, oh, I'm so bored at work. It was like you were joyed, like you were excited to go to work, you were excited to come home. And then it was all of a sudden I noticed that you're doing a lot of work on your computer also. So I was just trying to back from that mindset, because I think most of the time when people talk about their transition, it's like out of discomfort, but it was almost like you were comfortable. What made you, I don't know, maybe you did feel uncomfortable? What was that like spark to go, I'm also not only going to put in 8 hours at work, but I'm also going to put 8 hours a day almost for me? What were you thinking at that time?
So I've talked about like my why before on this channel, and I think that is truly like the heart of it, is like,
okay.
I just wanted to adventure more, explore more. So if you guys don't know my story, I spent basically 3 years living on the road, just traveling here, there, and everywhere, from Florida all the way up to Alaska in my little Mazda CX-9.
Yeah, the Boston to California.
Yeah, all over
North,
the
south,
place.
east, west. Yeah.
So it was more of that probably in reality. Not that I was lazy and I wanted to stay home more, but that I would like just saw the place that I was working as like an unnecessary building that I was going to. I was like,
Mm.
even if I was doing the same work for this company, I could be doing it on the road because I'm just using Photoshop and Illustrator and Corel Draw and all these programs that I already have like purchased for myself at home. So it just felt like a little constraining, I guess. That was the feeling that I was having of this building was just like the unnecessary part of my business. I had worked from home a couple of days a week, but they were still uncomfortable with that, like me doing full time at home or whatever. So that's when I was like, okay, let me find how I can use these same skills, hopefully the same industry, just a different boss, maybe a different income stream than working for them for an hourly rate.
So that's interesting because I think I do remember you working from home a few days. Do you think if that would have worked out, you would have not added merch because it would have been that's what you're trying to do is you're trying not to be tethered to a building? If they would have let you just work remotely, do you think you would have continued to work for them? Because you
It's
still have good relationships with them.
Yeah, and it is funny to like think back on this of like what exactly was motivating me. I think also like the salary cap was another thing that I was like struggling with because I didn't fully understand like the online marketplace and the print on demand world, but I was like, I'm sure that there are ways for me to cut out the middleman. I don't know if I could call them the middleman, but for me to work directly
With the customer.
with the customer. That's why print on demand is such like a weird world because I'm not even directly working with the customer. I'm just like throwing stuff out there. If the customer likes it, they buy it. It's not like I'm taking requests from the customer.
Hmm.
So I think that was my idea. I was like, I know I can design stuff that people like. I wonder if there's a way for me to just put it out there. And then again, my salary cap could be unlimited. It'd be as much work and time and effort that I'm putting into this. Not, some of the clients I had over there, I had the entirety of the job that I had was like a year and a couple of months working with this person like almost weekly on whatever t-shirt design that they wanted. And that was just like a real hassle where it's like, I'm working on this stuff and it's not going out to the customer, or I'm working on stuff and I'm only getting paid this hourly rate when I know they're making a ton of money off the designs that I'm making. So it was like a lot of those thoughts where I was just like, how can I do this for myself? I had tried to have my own like apparel business before I was working for them. And that was a nightmare because you have to drive traffic and build brand trust and all this stuff. So I was like, there has to be a solution out there for what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I guess it was interesting to go from you saw it as being able to scale. Like if I could sell this one design to this person and then they are selling it and making a whole bunch of money off the sales of that shirt, I should be able to do the same thing. I should be able to make the design and then get it to the customer. But I do remember you had a t-shirt business before that, but I don't know if you put like full effort into it because you're working for me and you didn't have much time. So I think that's why you're like, I got to do my own thing because I can't do the 15 things that you want me to do and then try to start a new business. So I think that's kind of why you went in that direction. But I think it helped you just wrap your head around like, what is it, the skills and the gifts that I have and how can I bring this to market? And I don't remember when merch came out, but it was like, that was a perfect match at the time for you. Cause then you could just worry about the designing side of it. And I guess that's what I'm really trying to get at for this month. If you just are focusing on one platform and one skill, that I think is the best place to start and build a POD business. It has worked for Nathaniel. It's worked for hundreds of other people that we've helped. Just start small, start slow, and really start mastering those skills. Even if, like Nathaniel said, if you start out and you go, oh, I'm not good at this, you can either hire that piece out, learn more to start mastering that skill, or work with other people like how me and Nathaniel did it. We both had our own merch accounts, still have many different businesses that we run separately, but we require, I don't know if require is the right word. We ask each other for help. And that's how we're able to, we enjoy working together. Yes. And that's how we're able to do a lot of these separate businesses is by going, hey, this is my area of weakness. I need you to design this banner. I need you to design this landing zone. I need you to design these marketing elements. So at least I can kind of put them together and then use them in my own marketing efforts. And I think the same thing for you. Like you need me to, I don't know about copywriting is the best thing because that's not my skill, but at least gather the correct keywords and position the stuff correctly. And that's how we're able to kind of do our own thing. From you coming home and then like being so energized to then work on your business, what made like your level of understanding on merch, how long did that take when it was just like, I'm going to do designs and I'm going to put this up? And I know we've told the story about you riding to work and that's kind of where the turning point was, but I think everybody's turning point is slightly different. But what made you keep going in merch? Like the fact that you were just doing designs and you were just throwing them up there, was it enjoyment? Like you just enjoyed designing so much and you're like, this is another outlet?
Definitely sales, making money from it. When it started getting close to even what I was making at the t-shirt shop,
Yeah, but there was a time
that's
before that where it was like there was nothing. Like what was the impetus to keep going when it wasn't
Oh,
really
I think it was the idea that it could work,
Oh, okay.
and it wasn't like I was using a skill I already had, and so we showed like these are the three skills we think you need for print on demand and specifically for merch by Amazon. I only had design, and I was like, there's not too many places where I can feel like I'm actually making progress toward something. If I'm going to do freelance, then I have to go back into having my own website, having a portfolio, dealing with clients, dealing with business or deal structuring, like all of that side of things. If I want to do anything else, like there's all these additional skills that I needed, and I saw print on demand. It was like, even though I know I'm doing a really bad job with the listing part of it, I was like, I can do a really good job with the design part of it. And there's very little barrier that stops me from making a really good design, putting a bad title on it, and at least pushing it to market. And I think I knew some of the struggle of like, that's not just an easy process. Merch by Amazon has made it very easy, but we had done private label. We have done wholesale where we're making listings, where I'm taking pictures, editing the pictures, putting them on the website, like doing the whole thing that takes us like a week to do, and then it takes like a month to get those products. So it was like the fact that I could do this massive amount of work by only using my one skill and in a very little amount of time, I was like, yeah, this is I don't know, there's a lot of hope that I'm putting in this platform where I'm like, at least I'm getting stuff up there. So I like feel like I'm accomplishing something. But yeah, before we were making money off of it, it was just like this idea of like, oh my gosh, I can do all of this work only using my one design skill, or my only skill, which was design. Without having to like involve anybody else. But that's why I said, like, when I did involve you, it got a lot better because then my designs were actually going to the right people. So that if I didn't have you, I think that would have been the time that I transitioned into trying to learn as much SEO stuff as I could for myself. Because I was like, I know the designs are here. I know when I go and I show my friends these designs, like some of them are even buying the designs off of, Amazon because they're like, oh, I really love that. I would actually wear that. And I was like, well, good, because I designed it with you in mind. And so then I would have been like, okay, how do I find these people, or how do I get my designs in front of the type of people who would be purchasing? So I just kind of skipped that step because I had you and we were working out of the same office. But that was, definitely the next step that I knew that I needed to like grow this business. So I think if you're doing this by yourself, you can kind of identify those things like, okay, I feel like my designs are pretty on point. Or, if you're the reverse of that, like I feel like my SEOs at a good point, I can find all the shirts that I'm putting up here. They're just not selling. So now let me try a little bit harder with the design type of things. And hopefully that's where I can help you guys.
Seeing the opportunity and seeing how good the opportunity was maybe what kept you going, because you were like, oh, I remember building the listings with Steven and it would take a long time and we had to do this amount of research and do this and take the pictures and upload it and make the listing like this, and it would take, that process took a long time. And I think you just being able to like, I can just design and make the listing like within an hour, I think that maybe let you see how great of an opportunity it was for you. Especially I think for me, I knew about merch, but I was like, I have zero design skill. Like I have no ability to do that. Like I can make the listings, I can do the research, I can do everything that was required except for the design, and that's what held me back from doing it. And I just kind of wiped it out because I was like, okay, Nathaniel's doing his own thing. I don't have the ability to even do that. It's not really something I want to start hiring out or doing anything with. So I was happy when you brought me in. One, because the day that you brought me in, you were like, hey, I made this last night and it sold this many times. And I was like, get out of here. Like, there's no way. Like, because I knew how long it took to make listings. I knew how long it took to get things up on Amazon, and then the process of waiting. And it was like a month. Like I'd have idea, and then getting to market was in a month. And then it was a lot of testing and tracking, and even like to do anything to get sales was a process.
All that stuff, yeah.
And it was like you idea to sales overnight, and then it was like you kept doing that, and then the one that really like launched off, that's when you brought it to me, and I was like, this isn't making sense. And then you were explaining it to me, and I was like, oh, there's a huge opportunity here. Like the fact that I can have ideas and test the market almost instantly, I'm all the way in. And I think now, after many years of learning that, is like, I think anybody can do this because the design piece of it is not that difficult. I just saw it as a huge barrier, whereas you, maybe from you, maybe it was disheartening for me because I asked you to do some art sometime and you opened up Adobe Photoshop and you showed me all the tools. And I was like, I'm never going to learn that tool to manipulate anything to make a design. So I'm out. But then after we learned about other programs and just saw how easy it was, and you showed me on even I think it was Microsoft or maybe Google Doc when you're like, you can just put a letter here and then this is how you upload it and this is how you need to download it and then you move it
Yeah.
over. I was like, oh, okay. Like I could even do that. And that's when I started testing. And then we learned more programs. I think maybe even asking you art questions at this point, less about the platform of merch, but just the skill of design. When you started, you said you went to school that didn't really teach you. And then you went and talked to a lot of people in the industry and they let you know how the industry works and the tools for the industry. Then I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, you talked about like how in order to do your skill, you need a tool. Whereas mine was like the research and the keywords, like there are tools that can help you, but you can do a lot of that stuff manually just with the internet and hitting the search bar and just seeing how people search. But for you, it was eye-opening to me to go, oh, in order to even design, you have to have a tool. And then what tools would you suggest and maybe even suggest how to start using those tools?
Yeah, so I mean, it's no surprise anyone who's watched this channel for probably even one video knows that I'm.
I need like a banner to like start putting across the screen. Warning.
Yeah, I am an Adobe fanboy, so that is where my bias lies, is with Adobe. And that's just because, like Steven said, I did go and for my college education, I had to interview graphic designers who had the ideal job that I wanted. So there's some people in the video game industry and in the advertising world, and I went to all these different industries to get these interviews, and I all used Adobe products. And so I think that's what sold me from day one. I was like, okay, this is clearly the industry standard. There are free softwares that I was using at the time, but I was like, I need to get my hands on Adobe because if I want to make it in this industry, that's probably the software I should be using. And so that's kind of what sparked all of that. And that's why I am the Adobe fanboy that I am today. But yeah, it's not probably the best place to start for a print-on-demand business is going out and learning Adobe Photoshop, because I cannot tell you the amount of hours that I've put into that program over the last like almost 15 years now of learning this software. There's been a lot of time put in, and I don't think it's necessary for what we are doing today. One, because now we have a team, so I've rarely open the software anymore, kind of sadly. But two, there's other free programs made by Adobe that you can use, but also just the concepts is really what you're trying to get to. With the t-shirt industry, it's way different than advertising or video games, which were the two industries that I initially wanted to go into. Because video games, you're doing like super detailed work and trying to like push graphics cards to their max and understanding all of that. And then the advertising world is just trying to create like super catchy things that is more working off like human psychology than anything else. And for the t-shirt industry, it's not really either one of those things. It's just trying to, maybe it's closer to human psychology with the advertising, but you're trying to create something that's going to be wearable on somebody. So you're not trying to create this like super high detailed or high quality piece of artwork that's going to sit on someone's chest. You're trying to create like an idea or even just mostly text on the shirt in a unique way that's going to draw people's attention, but also not make it like awkward for the person wearing it, where they're just like people are constantly staring at your chest, like trying to figure out what you're wearing. So I could easily do a whole show on that. So maybe next week
Yeah,
I
the
can
design theory, I think, is what
more
you
into
called
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple of presentations I could probably pull from and do a Monday show on that, because that's something I've been getting into again recently, working with a lot of clients and talking about design theory. So that's kind of fresh in my mind. But yeah, it's just not necessary to go out there, learn Photoshop, learn Illustrator for a print-on-demand business. You can use Adobe Spark, which we've definitely talked on this channel about before, which is made by Adobe, so it still makes me happy, but it's their free software that allows you to do just kind of basic things. And it is somewhere that I probably open up Spark more than I do Photoshop right now, just because of how simple it is to design over there. And it's just like gets rid of a lot of the excess that, possible things that I can do inside of Photoshop. It's like, let's make a design, let's make it my theory of bold, clean, and simple, and let's get it out there as quick as possible, instead of like, let me open up Photoshop and really like dive into design theory of, making the perfect t-shirt design. Because for print on demand, that's usually not what you're doing. You're not trying to just satisfy one customer. You're trying to make something that's a little bit more generic and hit kind of a group of customers. And so with art, it's this tricky thing of like, I want to create something that this group of people thinks looks good, but it's hard to do that because of everyone's art taste and everyone likes certain different things. So that's why text-based shirts or more simple designs usually can satisfy a wider audience than like, let's make this one specific thing that, you know, I really enjoy, I personally think is a masterpiece, but no one else like enjoys it the same way because they don't understand the depth and the meaning that I put into this design. So
that got me thinking. We have lightly touched on like the skills and mastering those skills. It's interesting that I don't know if I would say you're a master designer, but you're a very high level designer. You have a lot of skills. The fact that you're saying you use a tool that kind of limits you because of the type of design that you're making, you can do a lot more in Photoshop, but Spark allows you to just get the t-shirt idea out quicker and kind of refines you. I think sometimes that's why I use certain research tools for that same reason. Like I could do a week's worth of research on this, but really all I'm trying to do is just gather enough keywords to test the market. Let me use this tool because it's a simpler tool and just gives me what I need to test the market. So I guess there's even the mastery and skill, then just understanding the platform and kind of the limitations of the platform where you want to go, how much skill, time, effort, energy do I want to put in this before I test the market? I think we're both like hair trigger, like test the market quicker is the much better way of going about it because like me and you have said multiple times, I will guess at something and be completely wrong. You will guess at something and be completely wrong. And it's just let the market dictate what they want more than just like, you know what I think? I think this, and then I'm going to spend 2 weeks or a month doing it this way. And then before I even bring it to the market, and as soon as I bring it to the market, realize that I was wrong because I didn't get any sales. Nobody looked at it. I don't know where to put it versus where we're at now. Just like as soon as you have an idea, get it out in the market because you might just run into something and be like, oh, this is gold. How do I double down on this idea? It's getting the ideas out of your head to market to justify the amount of time that you might put into it going forward. Because we have certain niches that we've gone after that we wouldn't have gone after if we would have done it the previous way, where it's like, do all this research, do all this energy and effort. It's just too much to test this. But now that we've gone after these niches and they've really blown up, then I think you take a little bit more time and design at that point, but only after we've earned some money and justified worth putting that much time, energy, and effort into making it at a higher level for those clients. Because we know they're out there now versus like putting something out there where it's like crickets. We just put all this time. Because I remember you started designing, it would take you all day to do a t-shirt design. And that's when I was like, that's going to take forever. Like there's no way to scale or test the market. If you're making as fast as you can make a design and put it up there on merch's side, you're spending too much time designing to justify the amount of energy and effort you're putting in to make one listing where you could do half of that and then double your effort. It was like, that was a big eye-opening experience for me to talk to you to go, how long is this taking you? A day? We got to tighten that up. Like if we can put 100 listings out in the market versus one, you have 100 times more likely chance of finding something that's going to work for us.
Yeah, so two things I want to touch on there. Like that one was not an easy conversation for us to have. I think it was easy for you to say, but for me to like process that, I was like, that goes against everything I believe in. Like I want to make the highest level quality art that I can, and I'm enjoying this. Like when I was doing it by myself, it was like pure enjoyment of like, I just want to design and throw this stuff out there. If it sells, cool. You know, it wasn't until I partnered with you where it really became like a machine that was moving forward. It was like, you know, Steven told me to simplify my designs because that's what other people are doing and it's working. I was like, I don't want to do what other people are doing and it's working. But now years later, I am happy that we did that because we've been able to expand the business a lot more. But so along with simplifying, you said that Adobe Spark is a simple tool. And while I agree with that, the reason that I like it is because of the amount of time that it saves me. So Photoshop is like, you can do everything from scratch, but that means that you have to do everything from scratch. Yes, you can build like automated things to do certain different tasks for you, but as far as like manipulating text, like all of that stuff has to be done kind of, you know, by hand sounds silly, but there's just a lot more steps involved in like editing certain areas, as where with Spark you can edit like multiple things just by clicking and dragging. So to like resize text in Photoshop and to make it dynamic, so where it still looks good, you have to, you know, change like 7 different settings to like change the differences between the letter spacing and the line spacing and the shape and all these different things. But in Spark, you can just grab one handle and like change it, and it will automatically conform to wherever you're putting it. So yes, it is a simpler tool, but it's not like, that's not the reason that I use it or why I love it. It's because of it simplifies like the amount of steps that I have to take. So I don't know if that's clear, if that makes sense. But just you saying that, I was like, I don't want to turn people off from using this tool. I want them to understand like why I'm using it is not because like it's completely limiting all of my creativity. It's because of the time that it takes to do things in Spark. It's just way quicker, because that's the way they designed the tool. It's not for people who have spent 10, 15 years in the design industry. It's for people who are just looking to make a quick design and do that without a lot of hassle.
So I guess when we say simple, it doesn't really mean like it's making it, like the tool is not simple. It's making it easier to use. Like you said, just changing up the fonts and the sizing. You have a lot more usability on a tool like Photoshop, but inside Spark, you can do what you want quicker without having to go through 15 different steps.
Exactly.
I really like Spark because I remember you, like I would ask you to change something and I would think it would be that way. You just grab it and move it and make it easier. And then you would show me like, in order to do that, you have to go through all of these steps. You have to change the layers, you have to do all that. And I was like, okay, that makes it more difficult. I just thought it was, I could grab that and move it. Then when we found Spark, I was like, this is what I thought Photoshop was. And I understand the difference between the two, because if you do want the shadowing perfect and you want it to like edge out over the background and the design and you pull in an element and it's like, you need that level to make that level of art. But for what I wanted to do, I didn't need that level. I just needed to do like this. Can I make the WingMan slightly smaller and the merch bigger, then move this thing on the side? Yes, you can in both, but in Photoshop, it would take me probably a month to figure that out versus Photoshop or in Spark, I can just do it. Like I can manipulate stuff to where it gets to where I want it to look. Now, could it look better? Could it be tighter? Could you tighten up the lines? Could you vector it, make it all kind? Yes, but that I don't need any of that. So I guess saying the tool is limiting is just the understanding behind that, I guess, is what we're saying it without explaining it. I think you taking the time to explain it makes it easier to understand. We're not saying the tool is, I don't know if simple is the word, easier to use than Photoshop. And you can still get the listings made, designs made. You can get the designs made to then start testing them quicker with a tool like Photoshop or Adobe. For somebody like me, I'm not even going to use Photoshop. So it's either I could do it or I can't do it. With Spark, I can do it. If it was Photoshop, I just would not have a t-shirt business. I would not have a POD business because I'm incapable of doing it. Or I would have to hire, like how we have now, teams of people to help me with this. And I think if you're just getting started, that's not a reality. Like you can't go, hey, I'm going to start a t-shirt business and now I'm going to have to hire people, multiple people to do all these jobs. I think you should bootstrap it. I think you should earn as you learn, because even when you go to hire these different designers, you'll have a better understanding of who's capable of what and how long this stuff should really take. And then if you're really trying to do POD, it is simpler designs, quicker is what you're looking for more than a artist. Because I know you did both. You were looking for high-end artists and then you were looking for people that can do art quickly. And I realized very quickly that it was, there's multiple layers of design. We're looking for more people that can get things done quicker so we can knock out any design, so we can test the market quicker more than make the perfect design. Because we had some Halloween designs that I thought were amazing, but they just took too long. And then it was like, we kind of missed the window to go after this. We needed to let them know way beforehand so that we could properly market it and then get it to the customers.
Yeah, that's why I said art is like tricky. Just putting like a simple saying on a shirt is pretty universal, but the designs that me and you thought were like super cool, they didn't sell as well just because like you had to think that specific type of art was really cool. So if you don't like that artist and their style, then like you're less likely to buy. But it's kind of it's less based off of like your opinion of the art and more of like what does the shirt say. Like that's a lot easier to sell that concept and that idea. So
yeah, I guess the demographic of people that will buy just t-shirt text are a lot higher than people that'll buy, like you said, the certain
a specific
style
art.
Yes.
Yeah, from a specific artist. Yeah. So if that artist has an audience, then I'm more than happy to talk with them, but it's hard to like find their audience and like the people who are going to really enjoy this. That's a hard thing to do online. So there's a lot in this world. The last thing I want to say about Adobe Spark, at least for this call, is that I really do love that they're slowly teaching you like the Adobe language. So if there ever is a point where you start feeling limited by Adobe Spark and you're like, man, I really wish that I could do this or add gradients or, align things a little bit a little bit more exactly, then you can transition into something like Photoshop. It's not going to be 1,000% like smooth transition. There's going to be a lot of learning you still have to do, but you have a really solid foundation if you're starting with something like Spark, rather than just jumping in completely blindly. So I will say that's the last thing I want to talk about, but I just think that transition is cool. And I've seen 2 or 3 people go through it this year in the last couple of months. That's been encouraging to me to be like, okay, that is a topic that I can bring up and talk about. People starting with Spark can transition into Photoshop and have a good base to start off of. So if you're designing things, you're like, man, my audience really does like higher detailed artwork, and I'm starting to personally enjoy creating higher detailed artwork, then looking into something like Photoshop or another tool that's out there you could possibly use. But I would say sticking inside of the Adobe world, is just a good thing to do and allows you to have that tool that you can really use all of your creativity on. So
yeah, I guess it's the kind of the difference between Apple and Android. Like they're both phones, they both have apps, but it's just the language that you have to learn. With most Android phones, there's like back buttons and stuff to make it easier to navigate, whereas on Apple, you have to like do a lot of hand gestures, but it's like once you learn one, it's easier to go to the next level up in that phone. So if you get a basic Android, you can go to the top of the line, whatever at the time, I don't know. I haven't followed phones in a while. The same thing for Apple. Like you can start learning the language. It makes it easier to go to the next level. I think when I was editing, I've used a lot of different editing software, and it took me a while to transition from one to another. Even going now to Adobe Premiere and using After Effects, it was just like, I know how to do all these things. I don't know how to do them in this tool. I wish I would have started with, I'm not saying Adobe because I'm not that big of a fanboy, but I just a better understanding of like, I'm going to learn this. This is something that I like to do. What is the correct tool to start with? So I don't have to, every time something changes or I want to go to the next tool, I have to spend 6 months learning a new language. I know how to edit. I know how to do all the basics, but I don't know how to speak the language of the tool. That process takes a lot longer than I remember. So I think starting with Spark, if you like design, is a much better place to start because you do start learning the language of Adobe.
Yeah, it's that like knowing how much time and effort you're gonna have to put into this skill. I don't think when you started editing, which was just like little fun videos for me and you, it was like, okay, one day we're gonna have a teaching business and I'm gonna be spending 40 hours a week editing. But if you know when you start that like this is probably a skill that's gonna develop over years, probably looking at the industry standard for whatever that area the industry uses is probably the best thing to start with. That way you're not putting time into a platform that you're going to outgrow and wish that you had, devoted that time to just whatever the industry standard is, because usually the industry standard is just proven, to be long lasting and to give you the most freedom when it comes down to like the nitty gritty stuff. So yeah. Adobe.
Yeah, and I guess you can gauge it off of enjoyment. Maybe that's a better place to start. Like if you like doing research, I don't know if there's a tool that I would suggest, like this is the research tool, but for sure design. Like if you like design, I do think Spark is the best place to start because it is in the Adobe family. And Spark is not just like a tool to use for POD. There's many things baked in there. Like each individual platform for marketing is already pre-baked in there. Plus you get all of their knowledge, their colors. And then even now that they're adding the video editing, it's like, oh, I wish this tool was around when I started because I would have probably started with these fun little videos inside this tool because it was free and I get to just learn the basics and it's very limiting. Now it's I think an easier transition from using Adobe Spark's video editing than moving to Adobe Premiere because the terminology is the same. The way that the tool works is similar. There's a lot more usability to a tool like Premiere, but I would at least have a better foundation to go to the next step. I think I did enjoy editing. That's why I jumped to different editors that were better and better. I think at the time I should have, like you, stepped back and started asking the industry and said, like, what is the standard to this? If this is a skill that I want to really learn, what tool should I be looking to use? And I think it would have been obvious that Premiere or something like that would have been a tool that I gravitated towards. But I think Spark is a great tool for that reason. You get to learn with POD, and then if you want to do marketing, it's real easy. Everything is already baked in there. To have that same design, you can redesign it or restyle it or use it in different ways. You can use it in the editor to make different like actual Facebook ads. Like everything is all inclusive inside that tool.
All right, we're going to stop there. As much as I love Adobe, we are not getting paid by Adobe. I feel like this is a commercial at this point. But the basic idea that we're trying to get across is you have to focus on one skill set. If it so happens to be design, that's what we are going to be talking about this month, and then I'll be pulling out more topics that I think are relevant to learning design. But yeah, that's what we're trying to get to. We're not trying to have an Adobe commercial here. We're just trying to let you guys know kind of where I started and what I suggest for anyone out there who is looking to get started with the print-on-demand world. If design is the thing that you're trying to do or a skill that you're trying to build, I suggest Adobe Spark, but it can be kind of anything that you want it to be. So
yeah, and you have some teaching on this, and we have touched on making like very specific teaching. So this is something else that we should do this month, is make very specific teaching on Spark for merch, and maybe starting with text only, because it seems like that's, I think, the best place to start. Even if you're a designer, starting at the basics, I think, is the best place to help you wrap your head around how to make good designs for merch for the t-shirt industry, and then start growing into how do I make good designs for POD, more than, like you said, making marketing ads where you really think about the psychology, or doing different things for video games or movies where it's like super produced. It's like having, what is a good t-shirt design? And I think you've talked about this too, and maybe that's in the art theory where it's like, what is good design? I know we've done presentations on that also.
Yeah, definitely all within my wheelhouse, so I'm happy to talk about it. But if you guys are interested in this tool, we do have videos on YouTube, and like Steven said, we'll probably do some specific teaching on this in the future. But for this week...
I'm sorry, this is more for me in future. I will put links in the description for any kind of Spark stuff that we do. So after this, if we do, I think I'm going to try to really press on Nathaniel to build a class or a course around Spark. We have one, but I think it needs to get updated because Spark has updated so much. So I will get on Nathaniel, but I will make sure that that link goes in the description. And I'll also put a playlist down in the description too, because I know Nathaniel has put a lot of how to use Spark. And maybe I'll get with him too and just like, let's break Spark down so that we can make a playlist just specifically for Spark to help you guys out.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Because most of the time Steven's like, make a video on Spark, and just like do whatever comes to mind. So I think having you there to like slow me down and walk me through like exactly what someone starting off would need would be good. So we'll work on that. But until next week, we will see you guys around.
All right, guys, take it easy.